as you no doubt already heard by this point, Anduin seems to be stepping down from the throne of the Alliance. Now, this is already old news, however, the brand new info is that this is more than likely going to be permanent, and he might be completely abdicating the throne of the Alliance, as in giving it up. The info itself comes from various interviews post Dragonflight announcement, as well as some new 9.2.5 datamined stuff that we have. As you might imagine, this could have some insane changes for the Alliance itself, as the Friend bloodline will no longer be in charge, and it looks like either Turalyon is going to be ruling for good, or there might be an election for a new leader of the Alliance. How will this affect the faction and the entire Warcraft in the future? If you're looking to buy games and get the best price on the market, then Instant Gaming is for you. You can get all the Warcraft products from Game Time and expansions, but pretty much all your favorite games are there for Steam, Origin, Battle.net, and everything else you can think of. With Instant Gaming, delivery is instant 24/7. Now, if you use my link in the description and my code DORON, you can support the channel, but most importantly, you can get an additional discount. So check out Instant Gaming. Previously, I've already made a similar video where we discussed the conversation we got in the aftermath of the story of 9.2 after the defeat of the Jailer, where we got a bit of dialogue between Anduin and Greymane that talked about Anduin taking a break from ruling while leaving Turalyon and Greymane in charge, but the conversation itself strongly hinted that this is literally just a temporary break, as Gen told him to just take some time you need, but please come back when you're ready, and that really seemed to be the state of things, like he's going to return any moment now. If you remember, at the beginning of Shadowlands, Anduin was abducted by Zobal as he was taken into the afterlife to be used as an agent, and in turn, Turalyon became the new ruler of the Alliance. Now, this is incredibly important to note that this really is actually a really big deal, as the House of Rin have ruled the Kingdom of Stormwind for a really long time. Kingdom of Stormwind, while not the Alliance itself, is essentially the center of the Alliance and the main part of the newly formed faction, similar to how the Orcs and the city of Orgrimmar are the founders of the Horde. Now, I know what you may be thinking, but didn't Bolvar rule in the absence of Varian, so the Rin family was not in charge when Varian was abducted, and yes, you are right, but Bolvar wasn't really a ruler. Anduin was the ruler at the time. He was just a kid. I mean, you saw him standing there, so he just did things in his stead. Now, if Varian never returned, Bolvar would rule for some time until Anduin grew of age, and then he would take over the throne, and really, it would be a temporary pause as the House of Rin would just continue to rule the Alliance. However, in this case, there is no little kid Rin. Now, Turalyon is literally just ruling the Alliance itself. Until this point, he was a regent, but it seems like he might just become an actual High King, like he might actually be crowned. Previously, in the story at the end of 9.2, we believed that this was really just a temporary thing until Anduin could wrap up a few things in the Shadowlands, and then he would return, but it looks like all the things are hinting that this is going to be permanent, and it might in fact be the end of the House of Rin ruling over Stormwind and the Alliance, which is a really big deal for the kingdom. Now, this is not just my speculation. The info itself comes from an interview as Dragonflight was announced, as Blizzard was asked whether Anduin is going to play a big role or not in the new expansion, and Eon actually gave us some really interesting hits. Now, I'm not going to quote the entire thing, but I'm going to paraphrase it in the simplest of terms. So, he pretty much said, yeah, we're going to see him sooner than Dragonflight, and that is in 9.2.5. He went through a lot, he was changed by this experience forever, and he will never be able to just go back to who he was in the past. This is a journey and something he has to deal with. Now, we don't want to spoil things for the future, but our current assumption is that Anduin will step down completely as a king of the Alliance and Stormwind. That is pretty much what he said, and this is purposely vague because they didn't really want to confirm it definitely, but other bits of info are also confirming that this is indeed going to be more than likely permanent. As you might remember, if you watched the previous video, we got hints at what he will be doing from the recently released Sylvanas novel. The biggest hint is that he will be helping out Sylvanas fulfill her tasks for some reason, although some people are speculating he isn't really doing it for her, but possibly to free his father or other souls that might still be caught up within the maw, or it might be a good way for him to just come to terms with what he has been through with the entire Jailer thing. Now, another interesting interview that Blizzard did gave us some new hints, and now we can actually combine this with the new quest we have just datamined in 9.2.5 about a week ago. If you want more details, watch my previous video as I covered all the stuff there is, but essentially Essentially, there is a quest where we learn that the Forsaken are starting to gather into this glades together with Kalimanethil, strongly hinting that either a war is happening or some type of a diplomatic solution that we'll soon learn about, but something is definitely brewing, something is going on. Now, in the interview itself, they said that with 9.2.5, we will see that a lot of things will be happening back on Azeroth, and we will learn of some new events that transpired. There will be pre-patch events where we will find out what is going on with both Stormwind and Orgrimmar and their leadership, who is going to continue to rule, and most importantly, how the Alliance has been faring with Turalyon's leadership at the helm and what has been different since then. Now, I don't want to repeat myself with the entire Turalyon bad, war coming, light coming, yada yada. You heard about this theory a dozen times at least by this point, but I can't say that it is far from the truth, as there might actually be some type of potential with that. There is quite a lot of substance with this theory. You gotta keep in mind, Turalyon is actually of Lord of the Nobility. He was born as Lord of the Nobility, and he is ruling over a southern kingdom on the completely opposite side of the continent. I mean, sure, he is a hero of the old Alliance and greatly respected overall by all the people, but after all, he has nothing to do with the House of Rin or Stormwind or their tradition, realistically. On top of all of that, he's at the same time the leader of the light as a force, as a significant cosmological force. This constantly brings up that famous quote that the Golden One claims the vacant throne, the crown of light will bring only darkness. This quote itself, I know, it is kind of getting cheesy, and it is constantly relevant, and really it strongly indicates that he will do something bad, that he will bring some type of darkness. The crown of light will bring darkness. Could this indicate the exact same scenario that happened with Troll and Garrosh, where Troll gave up the throne of Orgrimmar in good faith, and then he had to go through an entire civil war in order to get it back and to just give it to someone else? I mean, Horde had 2 civil wars in less than a decade, big ones, and the Alliance not even one. It also seems like there might be some strong, very different currents within the faction itself. One that is following Anduin and is all about peace, cross-faction grouping, working together, and just finally bearing the weapons of war. While on the other side, there is Gen that hasn't really come to terms with the situation and is looking to just rule over the entire continent and to get Gilneas back, which of course is logical. Additionally, Turalyon has pretty much been mute since he became a king. We really don't know what he's doing, where he stands, what are his views. Since Blizzard confirmed that there won't be a BFA type faction conflict happening, there might be an Alliance civil war where Anduin might have to come back from this exile. On top of all this, Dragonflight seems to be heavily based on Mists of Pandaria, and yeah, you know how Mists of Pandaria culminated in a Horde civil war, so that might be happening with the Alliance. However, all the things right now are hinting that Anduin will never again be a king, as in he doesn't really wish to continue to fulfill that role, not that he was pushed out by someone else. There is also still a strong hint that the Light versus Void thing will be happening, that big prophecy where he will be the leader of the Light. Maybe Anduin will transcend and become something along the lines of Troll, Khadgar, or Velen. Just how Troll stepped down from ruling over a faction to calm the elements after the Sundering. Anduin might do a similar thing, just not with the elements, but with the cosmological forces. He might become a leader, just in a different sense of the word, not a faction leader. So instead of High King Anduin, we might be getting a Khadgar 2.0. Thank you for watching. Check out the Forsaken preparing for war in Terrestrial Glades by clicking on the screen, and check out Doronsmovies Academy for videos on real-world history. See you next time.